Hi, in this video, I'll show you how to add and subtract the integers. So let's get started, and it's a pretty easy rule to remember. So if you see two like signs, so suppose if you see two like signs, you have to add, but you keep the sign of the greater number. Now, if you see two opposite signs, so if you see suppose two opposite signs, you have to subtract and you keep the sign of the greater number. Then, so order doesn't matter. So suppose if you see negative sign first and then the positive sign, you're still going to subtract. So order doesn't matter here. So if you see opposite signs, you have to subtract it. If you see the like signs, you have to add. So suppose if you see positive, you have to add. Now let's look at this. I'll look at one example here. Suppose if I have -5 minus 2. Now, what do you see here? You see two like signs. So whenever you see two like signs, you have to add. So how will you add? Ignore the sign. So 5 has negative sign in front of it and 2, and you're subtracting 2. So you just ignore the signs for now. You have to add. So 5 plus 2 will give you 7. Only add the absolute value. So the absolute value of -5 will be 5, and absolute value of -2 will be 2. So you only add the absolute values. That means you ignore the signs and you only add the numbers. And then now you're done with the addition and you have to keep the sign of the greater number now. So which number is greater between these two? We know that 5 is greater. Ignore the signs. 5 is greater than 2, so we'll keep the sign which is in front of 5. So it's negative sign, so we'll put the negative sign in our answer. Now let's take a look at another example. -3 minus 5. Again, we have two like signs, so we'll add 5 plus 3, or 3 plus 5 will give me 8. And now I have to see which number is greater. 3 is greater or 5 is greater. I will not look at the signs. Signs only confuses me, so I will only look at the numbers. Which number is greater? 5 is greater, so I will put the negative sign in front of my answer since 5 has negative sign in front of it. Now let's take a look at another example. -8 plus 4. Now this time I have the opposite signs, negative and positive opposite signs. I can also look at this or this. So negative and positive. So I have to subtract. This time I have to subtract. So I will subtract the smaller number from the greater number. So 8 minus 4 will give me 4. And then I have to see which number is greater. Which number is greater, 8 or 4? I will not look at the signs. I know that 8 is greater. So 8 has negative sign in front of it, so I'll put the negative sign in front of my answer. Next, let's look at the next example. -9 plus 18. Now again, I have the opposite signs here. So I will subtract. I will subtract the smaller number from the greater number. So 18 minus 9 will give me 9. And then I have to keep the sign of greater number. Which number is greater between these two? 9 or 18? 18 is greater, and 18 has the positive sign in front of it this time. So this number will stay positive. I don't have to write the positive sign in front of it because any number, if it's written without the sign, that it's always considered as positive. So this is 9. Next is -3 plus 5. So again, I have two opposite signs, so I will subtract this time. So 5 minus 3 will give me 2, and then I have to keep the sign of the greater number. Which number is greater between these two, 3 or 5? Obviously, 5 is greater. So 5 has positive sign in front of it, so I'll keep the positive sign here, and I don't have to write the positive sign in front of my answer. It is considered as positive number. The next is -7 minus 8. Now this time I have two like signs. So I will add this time, since whenever you have two like signs you add it. So 7 plus 8 will give me 15. But then I have to keep the sign of the greater number. Ignore the signs. Only look at the numbers. Which number is greater, 7 or 8? 8 is a greater number. So 8 has negative sign in front of it, so I'll put the negative sign in my answer. Let's look at the next example, -2 plus 1. Now, again, I have the opposite signs here. Whenever you see the opposite signs, you subtract. Whenever you see the like signs, you have to add. So this rule, I mean, it's pretty easy to remember, and you'll get used to it. So you will subtract this time. So you subtract the smaller number from the greater number. So 2 minus 1 will give me 1. But then I have to remember that I have to keep the sign of the greater number. Which number is greater, 2 or 1? 2 is greater number. So 2 has negative sign in front of it. That's why I'll put the negative sign in front of my answer. Let's look at this example. 8 minus 6. What do you think about this? Now you have to remember what you already know. Don't confuse yourself. 8 minus 6 is a simple problem. You can just see and then write the answer that 8 minus 6 will be 2. But I will show you how to go with the rules. So 8 is considered as a positive number since we don't see any other sign in front of 8. So this will be considered as a positive number. Positive number and a negative. So the opposite signs, you see the opposite signs, so you have to subtract. And you subtract the smaller number from the greater number. So 8 minus 6 is 2. And then you have to keep the sign of the greater number. So 8 is greater than 6. So 8 has a positive sign in front of it, so we'll put the positive sign. Well, I just showed you if you have to go by the rule, how do you solve it? But this thing you already know. So you can, by just looking at it, you can just say that 8 minus 6 will be 2. Now, next problem is, suppose if I have -7 plus 4. So again, you have the different sign, opposite signs, you have to subtract. You subtract 4 from 7, so 7 minus 4 will give you 3. And then you have to keep the sign of the greater number. Which number is greater? Ignore the signs. 7 is greater or 4 is greater? 7 is greater, and 7 has negative sign in front of it. So I have to put the negative sign in front of my answer. Next question is -8, -5. This will be, now you have the like signs together. Whenever you have the like signs, you have to add. So you add 8 plus 5 will give you 13, and then you have to keep the sign of the greater number. Which number is greater, 8 or 5? 8 is a greater number, so you can put the sign which is in front of 8. So this will be -13. Now, how about this? 8 plus 5. Now, this is just simple addition problem. 8 plus 5 will give you 13. So this is positive number, this is positive number, and this will give you 13. So it's just a simple example. Then -12 plus 16. How about this one? So you have one negative sign, one positive. So you have the opposite signs together. So you'll subtract. 16 minus 12 will give you 4. And then you have to keep the sign of the greater number. Which number is greater between these two? 16 is greater than 12. So 16 has positive sign in front of it. So I will put the positive sign, but I don't have to write the positive sign, so my answer will still stay 4. It's necessary to write the negative sign in front of a number, but it's not necessary to write the positive sign in front of the answer. Then next is -7 plus 3. Again, I have the opposite signs, negative and positive, so I have to subtract again. I will subtract the smaller number from the greater number, so 7 minus 3 will give me 4 again. And then I have to keep the sign of the greater number. Which number is greater? It's 7 or 3? 3 is greater. 7 is greater, so 7 has negative sign in front of it, so I will put the negative sign in front of my answer. And then last example, -10 plus 5. What do you see here? You have opposite signs. Whenever you have opposite signs, you subtract. So you have to subtract. 10 minus 5 will give you 5. And then you have to put the sign of the greater number. Which number is greater between these two? 10 is greater. Always ignore the sign. Don't look at the sign. So 10 is greater than 5, and 10 has negative sign in front of it. So I will put the negative sign in front of my answer.